thank you for the Historical Society for inviting me to speak tonight, part of your programming this year. And thank you for all of you guys. Thank you for coming out tonight. I know you had a lot of things you could have done, but I really appreciate you coming out and listening to some great stories about Appleton and some World War I heroes that came right out from our fine city here in Appleton, Wisconsin. So, as Gwen mentioned, I'm a huge history guy, love Appleton, specifically Appleton military history. And people don't really realize how much history is here in Appleton, especially when it relates to military. The tradition goes all the way back to the Civil War. Appleton was represented in the Civil War and basically every conflict since. So tonight we're going to focus on World War I and some of our heroes in that particular era. So, as I've been researching over the years, I want to make sure I'm getting my pointer right. Good, so far so good. This particular photograph has always piqued my interest, and I'm sure some of you have seen this photo before. When I have seen it, I've never really seen any other details to it. So if you can see it, I'm going to try to use my pointer. Up here you can see Hoffensberger Brothers building. Okay, so it kind of gives us a clue that we are on College Avenue, correct? We can see some of the soldiers out front here wearing that World War I helmet. And obviously we see a casket being pulled by the horses and some older vehicles. So I never really understood, had an understanding of what this particular photograph was. And it wasn't till about, I don't know, a couple of years ago, may have been actually through the Historical Society, on one of your face-based pages or your newsletters or something like that, that this particular picture, the one that I just showed you, but now it has this text down below. And if you can't see it, it says Sergeant Herman Yankee Funeral, Downtown Appleton, June 13, 1921. So when I saw that, I was super, super excited to see that, because now it kind of gave me some more clues on that. So with that, I was able to use a lot of the research that I had done already on Company G, Appleton and World War I, and put that together with this photograph. So tonight, we're going to talk about this particular day in Appleton's history, why it was important then, unfortunately it's forgotten today, and why we should remember it today, and who is this person here, and also why this title here is technically, well, it's half correct, and you'll find out as we move forward through the presentation. So, moving forward here, World War I. Now, as much as I would love to spend the next 3 hours talking about World War I and the origins and what happened, I can't. So, what I'm going to ask you guys to do tonight is just remember 3 basic things about World War I that will be relevant to our presentation. Number 1, World War I starts in August 1914, and the bad guys are Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. These 3 empires are going to declare war basically on the rest of Europe. Okay? August 1914 is when World War I starts. Germany is going to try to knock out France in about 6 weeks, and they get darn close of doing that. They end up getting stalled right where you see these dots here, and you can see a line behind that. They will stall at that line in middle September, and this line will not move for almost the next 4 years. And this line is a 475-mile from the North Sea all the way down to Switzerland. History will forever know that as the Western Front. Okay? That was the goal of Germany, to knock out France right away, and then they would focus on Russia. Again, that did not happen. Number 2, what I want you to remember tonight is April 6th, 1917 is when the United States declares war on Germany. Okay, that's when the United States gets involved in World War I, 2.5 years after the war has already started. Okay, and it's because of the U.S.'s entry that they finally turn the tide, that the war changes. Germany is out of resources, they're worn down, but the might of the U.S. with manpower, resources, all of the things that are needed to win a war, turn the table. And this Western Front that has been sitting there for about 3 years, 4 years, will quickly recede by September, October 1918. They recede, my wife won't like this one, it recedes faster than my hairline. That's how fast the Western Front receded. You'll make sure you can laugh during that one. Okay, all right, good. I was waiting all week to say that one. So that's this. And then the third point I want you guys to remember is November 11th, 1918 is when World War I ends, okay? August 1914 is when it starts. U.S. gets involved in April 1917. It ends November 11th, 1918, okay? Almost a year later, in October of 1919, the United States offers a couple things to families who lost a loved one overseas in World War I. At the time, the U.S. government, in October of 1919, they tell everyone who lost somebody overseas that, number one, you could have them reburied into one of the 8 American cemeteries in Europe, or number two, their body could be brought home and buried at a private cemetery or one of the national cemeteries. Okay? So to do that, the United States will allocate nearly $5 million, and all of this will be paid by the government. Okay? The families do not have to pay for that. This program will start in November of 1920, go all the way through July 1922. There will be just over 46,000 soldiers' bodies that will return to the United States. And put that in perspective, the U.S. lost 116,516 soldiers in World War I. So nearly 40% of the soldiers that were buried overseas are brought back to the United States. Okay? It's also during this time that one of the more famous soldiers are brought home, and that is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, is dedicated in Arlington 17 on Armistice Day, November 11th, 1921. And the picture that I have here, we're going to reference this in a little bit. This is from a depot in Antwerp, Belgium. This is where the caskets of the soldiers were staged before they were transported to the United States. Very, very somber looking picture, very emotional picture right there. And again, we'll reference this in a little bit as we move forward. Okay? All right, so May 1921, word starts circulating throughout the city of Appleton that there are going to be 2 soldiers returning to the great city of Appleton. And the mayor at the time, Mayor Hawes of Appleton, he issues a proclamation after hearing this. And he says on Monday, June 13th, 1921, the city is going to honor these 2 soldiers that are coming back. Not only these 2 soldiers that are coming back, but all of those who died from Appleton and Outagamie County in World War I. So to do this, he issues a proclamation with 4 points that are going to happen during this time period. Number 1, all businesses on that Monday will close from 1 to 3 o'clock. 1 to 3 o'clock, all businesses will shut down. Number 2, starting on Friday, June 10th, when the bodies arrive to Appleton, all flags in the city will be drawn to half-mast until the funeral procession is done Monday afternoon. And the funeral procession itself will start at 2:30 p.m. Monday, June 13th. It will be a public funeral procession. And finally, all civic organizations like schools, such as schools, will be encouraged to participate in this procession, and we'll show you how they were here in a second. All right, so the 2 soldiers that are coming home are William Lang and Herman Yankee. Now, as you can see there, William Lang's first name is not Cook, but that was his profession in the military. He was one of the 3 cooks with Company G. Herman Yankee was a sergeant with Company G. They're both from Appleton, and they both served in the same unit that is based right out of here of Appleton called Company G, a National Guard unit called Company G. We'll talk a little bit about that right now, because I think it's important Some of you may have heard the term Company G, but when you go back to Appleton's history, especially the first 50, 60 years of Appleton's history, Company G is really, really important. You just say Company G and everybody knows who you're talking about. So what Company G is, just to kind of give you some background on that, in the early 1880s, the state of Wisconsin establishes their National Guard for the state of Wisconsin. So not every, but a lot of cities throughout the state will have their own militia or home troops. Appleton was no different. They had a militia in the 1880s that actually went back to the Civil War, okay? So when the state of Wisconsin establishes the National Guard in the 1880s, these local communities, these local militias will be reorganized and called a company of soldiers, okay? Each one of these company of soldiers, could be 80 to 100 of them, will then be attached to a regiment, okay? A regiment is gonna have about 8 to 10 companies, okay? What I want you to know for right now, without trying to confuse you too much, is Appleton's unit was Company G. A company went by the first letter in the alphabet and went alphabetically A, B, C, D. Appleton's was G, and they were attached to the 2nd Regiment, okay? Wisconsin National Guard, Company G, 2nd Regiment. That is what Wisconsin was. So then when we turn to 1917, in the summer when the U.S. declares war on Germany, the National Guard will have 6 regiments that are going to go to Camp Douglas in August of 1917. So all 6 of the Wisconsin National Guard regiments are going to start training there. They are eventually going to be joined with the National Guard units out of Michigan to form a division. A division of soldiers is about 25,000. The Wisconsin and Michigan are going to join together, and they're going to create what's called the 32nd Division. So the 32nd Division, and you may have seen their symbol, the red arrow. Okay, that's where that comes from. So if you're ever cruising State Highway 32 in Wisconsin, you will see this symbol right next to the number 32 in the highway sign in honor of the 32nd Division. Now, everything I said there is true with one little exception. When these units were training in the first week in August 1917, the state is notified that a brand new division in the United States is being formed. It's called the 42nd Division, and they are asking the Wisconsin National Guard to provide 3 companies of soldiers. 3 companies of soldiers. And Appleton, Oshkosh, and Fond du Lac are the 3 companies that are selected to not join the 32nd, but they are going to join this new division. The chairman, or the chief of staff at the time, is Douglas MacArthur. That Douglas MacArthur. He is chief of staff of the 42nd Division, and he wants to create a division that stretches from one end of the United States to the other like a rainbow. Hence, the 42nd Division will be known as the Rainbow Division. Thank Douglas MacArthur for that. National Guard units from 26 states are represented. So, now Company G is called Company A. I'm still going to call them Company G, not to just keep consistent. So Company G, when I say Company G, I'm still talking to our guys, okay? So Appleton, Oshkosh, Fond du Lac, and there will be a 4th company from Reading, Pennsylvania that will form a battalion. This battalion is going to be focused on this bad boy right here. They are a machine gun battalion. Their official name will be the 150th Machine Gun Battalion of the 42nd Division. Okay, this is the centerpiece of what they are got going on here. Company A, Company G, the Appleton's company, each company will operate 12 to 16 of these machine guns. This is the M1914 machine gun. This bad boy shoots off 8mm rounds, 250 to 400 rounds per minute at a range of 1,000 to 3,000 yards. It's a nasty weapon. And just like the picture shows, it does take a crew of men to operate one of these. For example, the gun itself weighs 50 pounds. The tripod here is over 70 pounds. So that's just the gun itself. We also have the other things to consider, the ammunition, how you get this weapon in the fields and the places. There's a lot of logistics that go behind this. So again, there's 12 to 16 of these, and Company G will be operating this machine gun throughout the war. All right, the leader of a company is called a captain, okay? So the leader, the captain of Company G is this guy, Lothar Graf. Love talking about Lothar. Unfortunately, I can't talk all night about him, but I will tell you that he is Company G's captain from 1916 through 1918. During those eras as well, or years as well, he works for the family business at the Graf Manufacturing Company here in Appleton. So if you're familiar where the Lawrence tennis courts are, that's where the business was at that time. A sign of the times, the Graf family is from Germany. They have roots from Germany. The story that I've been told by Graf's granddaughter is that Graf's mom said, if you fight against Germany, the fatherland, you are not welcome back to the family business. Now, fortunately for the men of Company G, Lothar pretends he doesn't hear that, moves on and fights in World War I, and the rest is history. He is invited back into the family business after the war. Okay, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of pictures of Company G in World War I. This is one of the few that we do have available. Some of you have probably seen this before. It is members from Company G in a dugout in France. And if you look close enough, it's hard to see, but there's our machine gun right there. There's our Hotchkiss machine gun. There's some of the ammunition there. And if you look at what these guys are wearing around their necks, those are gas masks. Okay, so this is taken in France. Company G will spend time in France from October 1917 to the war's end, which you guys now know or remember is November 11th, 1918. And the Company G will also stay in Germany as an occupying force. They will return home in May of 1919. Wanted to include this picture because this picture I actually just found not too long ago. This is a picture of the 150th Machine Gun Battalion in France when they're over there in 1914, and they're on their way. You could see them walking, traveling somewhere, right? But I was able to correspond that picture with an insert from the diary of Private Harold Grossman, who is a member of Company G, and he writes about this date, June 24th, which he said they rode on train starting at 1:30 in the morning, and by 3:30 they unloaded and hiked 10 miles. So what you see here is somewhere in that 10-mile hike. What also is kind of neat about this picture is it shows you some of the horses and the wagons and the equipment that were pulled because of the weapon that they carried. Horses and mules were very important to a machine gun company and battalion because they were the ones hauling all the equipment versus the soldiers, right? So Company G will come back in May 1919. They left for Europe with 155 men. 18 would die in service overseas, okay? And to give that to some comparison, approximately 40 men from Appleton will die in World War I. Now, I put a little asterisk, I should have put an asterisk, but when I say 40, that's not an exact number because during this time period, and some of you guys know this, we're doing research and things like that, when people identify from a city, it might be just their current place where they live, or some people will refer to their home or their birthplace as their city of residence. So when I say 40, I think it's a very fair number to think about. Give you some comparison. Outagamie County will lose 117 men in World War I. The state of Wisconsin will lose 3,932 men. And again, the United States will lose over 116,000 soldiers in World War I. Okay? And again, here we see that picture that we all started this off with. All right, let's start talking about the two soldiers that were part of this event in June 1921. William Lang, again, he's one of the three cooks in Company G. He's born in 1886, comes from a big family, five sisters and three brothers, and he worked as a lineman. Most people would say lineman, okay, work for the Packers, right? No, he worked as a lineman for the Wisconsin Telephone Company. That joke didn't work as well as the first one did. Okay. All right. And he also would serve with Company G, I pointed out here, the Mexican Border War. In 1916, the Wisconsin National Guard, including Company G, is going to go down with the United States Army to Texas to go after Pancho Villa. The rest of the Army, the U.S. Army, will go into Mexico looking for him, but Company G and a number of National Guard units will stay in Texas to support the logistics supply line. And that's where Company G will be from June 1916 through February 1917. So when you see the Mexican Border War, that's what I'm referring to. Their time down in Texas for about 9 months, okay? So William Lang is a cook with Company G. July 15, 1918, okay? You remember July 15, 1918. It's arguably the bloodiest day in Company G's history in World War I, and as well as Appleton's military history in World War I. July 15th, that early morning, Germany is going to launch its fifth and final summer offensive against the Allies. They're still trying to break the Western Front. And they succeed for a little time, but there's some counterattack back and forth for several days until finally the Allies take the offensive back to them. They take the attack back to Germany, and Germany now is starting to retreat by July 22nd. July 22nd, Company G will now be relocated to another spot on the Western Front. So to do this, they're going to load up on a train on July 22nd. Unfortunately for them, as they are loading up their supplies onto this train, a couple of German airplanes have spotted what they were doing. And these airplanes are going to come overhead and they are going to drop bombs on the guys as they are loading up the train. It causes huge panic. I included a couple quotes from that day from a couple of men who were there. On the bottom is Alan Ellis's, and he says, quote, "Fritz was aware of something going on and came over and bombed us, hitting the depot and setting it afire and smashing up 2 cars, causing several casualties, both men and mules. Everything that has been said about bombing planes is true. Deliver me from them ever after." And that is from Ellis. There are scenes where guys are scattering when this has happened through fields and things like that. The train takes off without them, matter of fact. Unfortunately, there is one fatality that day and that evening, and that is William Lang. William Lang will die of his wounds received from that bombing that night. Here's his burial card. A couple things to note here. The date of death, July 22nd, 1918. He will be buried the next day in full military honors in a small cemetery in France. Okay, so this is his burial card. He was buried in France. Now, of course, the family contacts the United States when they're offering this reburial program, and this is their card that was filed and received by the United States government, that the Lang family would like to have William's body returned to the United States. So what can we see here? His body was disinterred on March 25th, 1921. It was received in Antwerp, again referring back to the picture we saw before where the caskets were staged. He will be brought to this port. He will be shipped out to New Jersey and arrives in May 1921. And eventually he is put on a train on June 7th, 1921. And sent to Appleton and received in Appleton. He returns home on June 10th, 1921. Okay, same day, he returns to Appleton the same day as Sergeant Herman Jahnke. Okay, Sergeant Herman Jahnke, born in 1892. I put the names of his 2 brothers and sisters as another way of showing how important the German heritage or how prevalent it is in this area and in Wisconsin. His brothers' names are Adolf and Frederick, and his sisters' names are Anna and Hilda. And again, his name is Yankee. If that doesn't tell you the German heritage that he has, and that is also relevant here, great example of that. He works as a wire weaver at the Appleton Wire Works at the time of the war, and he will also participate in the Mexican border war in 1916. Now, Herman Yankee will die in October 1918. So again, if you were listening before, which I all know you were, point number 3, the war ends November 11th, 1918. Yankee dies in October 1918. There's another global event that is happening, major, almost as major and big as the World War going on, and that is the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu is going on during this time period as well. It's estimated that 26% of all U.S. servicemen will have been infected at some point during the war. That accounts to about 1 million soldiers will have the flu at some point. Also estimated that over 30,000 soldiers will die in training camps in the United States of influenza before they are even shipped out. Just over 16,000 documented men will die overseas due to influenza. And a post-war study said that in the year 1918, there was actually more hospitalizations of soldiers due to the influenza than actual wounds, combat wounds. Okay? Oh, and I should also say this picture right here, this I grabbed, this is from Fort Riley in Kansas, which research has slowly come out over the years that ground zero of the Spanish flu. It did not start in Spain. It started very close to Kansas in one of the military bases down there. So Spanish flu is a little bit of a misnomer. Here's his death card, in which I will show you here his death date of 10/10/1918. Okay, he will be buried 2 days later on the 12th, and the cause of death is listed as bronchial pneumonia. And again, bronchial pneumonia and influenza are going to be interchangeable terms throughout this time period. We know that there are several other men from Appleton and Outagamie County who will be listed as dying of, it will say influenza, but everything points to that is how Sergeant Yankee died in October 10th, 1918, was due to the influenza. Again, something people forget about, that not only were the guys battling Germans, but they were also battling this killer influenza as well. So his body is brought back on the same ship that Lang's is, and he will return to Appleton on the same train as Lang. It's also interesting to point out that that train that comes in that early morning on Friday, June 10th, it's also on its way to the UP. You see a couple other of the train cars have caskets in it, and they are on their way to deliver soldiers' casket to the UP. Appleton happens to be a stop as they're transporting soldiers' bodies, just like they are in Appleton. Okay? All right, so we get to the date, June 13, 1921. That is the day of the funeral procession in Appleton. Okay? A couple things about that before we jump into the actual date and the event itself. At the time in the morning of June 13th, Lang and Yankee are going to have private funerals. Lang will have a private funeral at St. Joe's here in Appleton, and Yankee will have a private funeral at St. Paul's Lutheran here in Appleton. After their services are over, the bodies will be brought and lay in state at the county courthouse until 2 p.m. that afternoon. At 2 p.m., the military has a small service for both of the soldiers, and then at 2:30, the bodies are brought out of the courthouse and loaded onto the carts for the procession. Exactly 2:30, every church in the city of Appleton will ring their church bells for exactly 5 minutes. 5 minutes, church bells throughout the city. That must have been some sight at that particular time here in Appleton, 2:30 that afternoon. So the procession is going to start here, and I apologize because some of you I know in the back can't see this, but down here by this number 30, this is the courthouse. The procession is going to move north on Walnut, hang a right on College Avenue, go all the way down to Union Street. It's the street right east of the Lawrence Chapel. Go up north on Union and hang a right on Pacific and proceed all the way to Riverside Cemetery. Okay, so here's another shot of it, just a little bit more close up for you guys to see. Again, starting down below here, here's the courthouse, Walnut, College, Union, Pacific, and then we get to Riverside Cemetery. Okay? All right, so let's talk about the procession itself. At the front line of the procession, and again, here's our picture. If you remember before, one of the first things I showed you was that image with the Hoffensberger brothers business in the background, which sources close to me believe this may be where the PAC currently is. I see some shaking heads. Okay, cool, good. So this is the front of the procession. We got the color guard here, and then right behind them is the regimental band coming right behind them. Now, if you recall earlier, I talked about that Mayor Hawes wanted participation from schools and organizations throughout the city. Here you're going to see the line of people that are going to participate. Here are the spectators, if you will, people watching on the side streets, underneath taking cover with some baby carriages back there. But these are Boy Scouts, and if you go further down, you're going to see smaller people, which are the school kids, and you'll see that on both sides. So what's going to happen is once the procession gets past a point, you are then asked, if you would like to participate, to join into the funeral procession itself. The Post Crescent will later say afterwards that nearly 1,500 people, they estimate, would be standing out here as well. There's the Red Cross, the Women's Red Cross was also another organization that stood out in lines in one of the streets. All right, next coming down the procession, these are soldiers. We got soldiers in uniform here with their helmets. These are active members of the 42nd Division, again the division that Company G was part of. And these are soldiers back here. These are members of Company G who served with Lang and Yankee. Okay. Next in the procession, also included in the procession, this particular photo shows two cars, and if you can kind of see in the back here, we got flowers. These are flower cars. There will actually be 4 flower cars that will be part of that day's procession. I got a couple of these pictures from somebody from New York City, and they told me that their grandmother is one of the women who are in this picture, and that's why their family had several of these pictures from this funeral, which is pretty cool. They've never been able to identify where Grandma is, but they know that she's there somewhere, which is kind of a cool story on that. All right, and then the first soldier is coming into our view, and this is Sergeant Herman Yankee. Sergeant Herman Yankee. Now you're going to see his casket is on top of a cart. That is actually donated from the fire department in Appleton. So they're going to decorate that, and then both of the bodies will have their own, each soldier will have their own carriage, pulled by 2 horses out front. Okay, and there is yes, I do know which is which soldier is which on here. And here is Cook William Lang, his carriage with the horses pulling him and his body being pulled. Okay? Similar scene. There's so much to look at, and I apologize. We kind of got to go through this enough. I want to make sure you guys are out of here by midnight. I want to make sure you're out of here by midnight, so I want to make sure I'm doing it at a good time frame here. All right, so this particular, it's a somber picture, but it's also interesting to see what's going on in the background. You see moms with little children, people watching, looking outside of the storefronts, and then you just see the background of Appleton itself. So much to look at, so much to look at. And here is what I believe the photographer was looking at this way, and now he or she has just kind of moved the camera and now is looking at the back end of the funeral procession, okay? A lot to look at here. Here are family members who are in cars at the end of the procession. Here is Lang, Yankee, the soldiers, the 4 flower cars here in the front of the procession, okay, as they're proceeding east on College Avenue. So we have just gone Walnut, and we have just gone College Avenue east. Now we're going to hit Union Street, and we're going to go north, and then we're going to hang a right or go east on Pacific Street. Next group of pictures here. We don't have it identified exactly where this particular picture is, but I believe we can say that this is Pacific Street, and here's why. And feel free to shoot my theory afterwards down. That's okay. Shadows. Shadows is, to me, is the one big one. You're talking June 13th. You're talking about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So the sun moving to the west, and that looks like a true shadow right in front of you. So Pacific goes west to east. So I believe this is what we're looking at. Or it could be the street right down the road from the Riverside Cemetery. Okay. Several things to look at in here. Again, this is the front of the line. Now we have Police Chief George Prim, who's included now into the procession, and then you see the regimental band in the background. It's also cool to kind of see what's going on behind there in a neighborhood right here in Appleton. One of the things I love about this picture is if you see this young lady here on the right, so I already heard somebody say that. If you took this picture, if I told you this picture is from 2024, you just see her walking down the street, what does it look like she might be doing? Yes, her cell phone. So all of those people out there who believe in time travelers, here's your evidence right there. She's on her cell phone. All right. All right, so next line in the picture here are our 4 flower cars. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we see a house is a little bit more visual. We see one of the side streets a little bit more visual here. And then we see a sidewalk back here. Again, I've tried cruising around in daytime, not at nighttime, to see if we can find a little bit of evidence or where this might be. So if this rings a bell, if you think you might know where this is, please let me know afterwards. I'd love to hear where you think this is. Next picture is showing the soldiers walking down the street here as well. Again, we have current members of the 42nd Division, and then we have members from that served with Lang and Yankee with Company G in the war. Okay. Now comes Sergeant Yankee's body. It seems like you got a little guy who wants to be part of it as well. And now we have, right in front of us, we have Cook William Lang. He's now in front of us walking by. And I don't know if you can see this, but the other thing that caught my eye on this picture is down here. You can see the trolley tracks. They're walking over the trolley tracks, and between each of the rails, you see the bricks, which I thought was kind of cool. So if you ever, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a trolley video out there on the internet that you can watch. But this is the route, obviously, that the trolley goes on.
We have it on our website, too.
You have it on your website if you haven't seen it. Thank you. All right, so this picture here, get to our next grouping of pictures of this funeral procession. Any guesses of where this might be?
Greenhouse in the background.
Yes. This is the Riverside Florist Greenhouses here, and we are now in Riverside Cemetery. Okay. Here is the police chief, Chief Prim, walking with the regimental band here. So the funeral procession has gone down Pacific, cruised up here, and now we are right in front of Riverside Cemetery. What is going to happen now that the funeral procession is going to split into 2. Half of them will go into Riverside Cemetery, where William Yankee will be buried, and the other part, or the other half, will go to St. Joe's Cemetery, where Cook William Lang will be buried. Okay, so what you're seeing is the procession for Sergeant William Yankee. Another picture we have here, here's one of the funeral cars coming in. Again, you can see the greenhouses in the background. Here's a couple of the columns, which are still there today. Lots to look at. I'll give you a couple seconds here. It looks like a mom or a grandma with one of the baby carriages there. These women are dressed in white. There was a request that if you are participating as a woman in this, that you wear all white that particular day. And I tried, this is how far technology as I get here. So the other day I took a picture, I went to the Riverside, and I stood right about where this picture was taken, okay? So here are the columns here, and you can kind of see them here and here. And as you guys well know, the greenhouses are no longer there. Another picture, and here comes Sergeant William Yankee's body being brought into the cemetery. Again, he's flanked on both sides. He's got soldiers who are also members of Company G that served with him. These will be the men who will stand by his casket during final rites, by his gravesite, and shoot 21 gun salute on his behalf as his body goes through. Now, same what we looked at on College Avenue. The photographer appears. He was shooting this way. He or she was shooting this way. And now they turned right around and now is showing Yankee's body as it's going into the cemetery. And if any of you are familiar with Riverside Cemetery, you might recognize this building here on the left. And here I tried to do my fancy detective work here. Here is where I believe the photographer was standing as this picture was taken. And you can still see this building here. And not as many trees as were there that particular day. And you can, if you can see, this procession goes down there. Yankee's body is, you take a quick left, and he is going to be, 200, 300 feet down the first row in the cemetery. And here's his grave marker. And in Riverside, and what you might notice, it has his rank, Company A of the 150th Machine Gun Battalion, 42nd Division, died in France. And the 150th, the Company A, Company G guys who fought in that machine gun battalion will have this medallion on their grave marker. Not all of them who served do, but many of the markers you will see in Riverside or St. Joe's will have this machine gun battalion medallion right there. And in St. Joe's Cemetery, the marker of William Lang, and his is noted here, which we talked about. He was killed in France on July 22nd, and here's his marker right here. Lang was 31 years old when he died, and Yankee was, I believe, 26 when he died. Okay, two soldiers were brought back on the same day. The city wanted to honor, again, all soldiers from Appleton and all soldiers from Outagamie County who died during World War I on this day. The city said we are no longer going to have any formal processions like we just had today. This was to make a statement for everyone who passed away. Okay? And Riverside Cemetery, I included this picture because the photographer was standing right here. So this is the entrance with the column here, and the procession is going this way through one of these arches, this arch here, photographer standing here, and then the last picture was taken over there. As I've been doing research over the years, especially on the topic of World War I have met some absolutely wonderful people and families who've shared their family experiences, their family members who fought with Company G or was from Appleton who served in World War I. And I would love to recognize these families now too. First one, Private Lemensky. Now, what I'm going to show you are soldiers that participated in World War I that I have had the privilege of meeting. Invited me into their homes and sharing some of the artifacts and the history of their family member. Okay. If it wasn't for the people I'm going to show you here, a lot of in the front end of my presentation, you would not have been able to see. So it's people like you presenting to people, talking to people like you that make this really awesome to be part of, because you guys are bringing the stories. Each soldier has a story. Peter Lemensky and Peter's son, Pete, was, I believe, a member of the Historical Society. He was very active in the Historical Society, went to many of the presentations. I actually met Private Lemensky's son after one of the Historical Society's events, and Pete invited me over to his house and shared with me a number of things about his father. Fortunately, Pete passed away a couple of years ago, but Brian, Pete's son, and Private Lemensky's grandson is here. Great. The family is super proud of their grandfather and everything he did in World War I. He was a recipient of the Purple Heart, once he received in July 18, 1918, during the bad 3 days in World War I that really devastated Company G. Private Harold Grossman, another family that I've met recently. Private Grossman was born in 1897 and is from Dale, Wisconsin, and he signed up with Company G. He also served with Company G in the Mexican Border War. I've had the privilege of looking at several of the family that has artifacts from Private Grossman, and what you see, the first two on the bottom here, this is a medal that he received from his service that the citizens of Appleton gave to all members of Company G after their participation in the Mexican Border War. And if you could see it, you can't really see it, but it says on the back here, presented by the citizens of Appleton to members of Company G for their service in the Mexican Border War. And if you've noticed in some of my presentation before, Private Grossman also had a diary, and I was able to read his diary and share some of the experiences in the presentation here of what was going on from his side, his view during this time overseas. Private George Giespers, right? Darlene, I'm saying this correct? Where's Darlene? I saw her. There, right? Giespers, yes. Private George Giespers, born in 1893. I have had the privilege of conversing with George's daughter, Darlene, and Darlene is here. She shared some wonderful stories about her father. What is really cool, and again, because I know all you guys are listening and paying attention, point number 2 that I talked about, World War I, the United States entered the war April 6th, 1917, right? Look at the date that George signed up, the day after. And the story that I've been told is that he and a couple of buddies loaded up on the wagon in Kaukauna and headed to Appleton to sign up. Pretty cool story, pretty cool story. He was also wounded from a gas attack on July 29th, 1918, and is the recipient as well of the Purple Heart. Wonderful story. Each one of these men I'm talking about, we could do a presentation just on each one of them. Has such a cool story, and it's been so neat to be able to hear those stories from the family members. Major Lothar Graf. If Appleton had a Mount Rushmore for military servicemen, Major Graf would be one of the guys. He is a phenomenal story, what he did in the city after the war. Super respectful. I've had the honor of talking with the granddaughter of Major Graf, and she pointed out, which I have confirmation thereafter, his house is still standing on East College Avenue, 914 East College Avenue. It's the north side of College Avenue. If you happen to be cruising the Ave on this Friday night, and you decide, hey, I'm going to go to the evil side of Kimberly or whatever, maybe JD's, going to hang out JD's parking lot for a little bit, this house will be right before you get over the bridge. Right before. And I won't say who the owner currently is, but I can tell you he or she might be here right now, but they have been in touch with them as well. They're doing a really cool thing. They're trying to keep the house, the theme of the house, back to the time period of when Major Graf lived there. A lot of respect. He's done a lot of research on Major Graf as well. But again, it's really cool that they're trying to keep the history going with that particular. So next time, again, as you're cruising down College Avenue, just give a nod. Don't knock on the door. Don't ask for a tour. because I heard they're very expensive. Don't bother with that. But again, Major Graff, really great family. Sergeant Leslie Holzer, I met his granddaughter, and I don't know if Laura is here tonight, after one of the Historical Society's meetings before. Sergeant Holzer was the first man from Appleton who was drafted in World War I. The family joke is that he won the lottery. That's literally what he did. He won the lottery. Unfortunately, he didn't win that $1 billion. Like the other night, he won a ticket to Europe. You know, that's what he got out of it. Sergeant Holzer, he returns after the war, does survive it, is wounded, and he is county coroner for a number of years as well. So his public service continues in the city of Appleton after his service. Private Joseph Whitmer, another absolutely great story, and his son Joe is here tonight. I got to meet him last fall, and Joe, his son, is super proud of his father. And Joe has actually taken some family, they've gone over to Europe to try to experience some of the places that his father were, where he was at during that time period. Joe's very proud of his father. What is unique about his position in the war is he was drafted, number one, he was drafted 1918, but he became a member of the 354th Aero Squadron, which means this is the plane that those guys flew right here. Joe's job, he served as an armorer, which I learned from Joe's son Joe, means that he fixed and maintained machine guns on that particular airplane. So that was Private Whitmer's responsibility in the war. And he served right there on the Western Front at the end of the war. Really another cool story. Whitmer's absolutely proud of their family in Private Whitmer's experience in the war. He lives out his days here in Appleton and was a very successful lawyer here in town. Private Joseph Whitmer. Last one I want to talk about here, and then I'll close up, I'll promise I'll be out of here, is Sergeant John Henschel. Sergeant John Henschel. He was a member of Company G. Born in Phillips, Wisconsin, 1894. Family moves to Appleton in 1900, and he also participates in the Mexican border war in 1916. Here you see Sergeant Henschel with his overseas hat. That's what they call that here. And this picture is pre-Europe, so maybe this is taken at Camp Douglas. Maybe it's somewhere down in Texas, but obviously it's when they were down by the Mexican border war. Don't really know, but one of the family members from the Henschels reached out to me and provided me a number of pictures, including these two, of John Henschel. What's also really neat of the men that I'm just talking about and the families, I've heard from people from Arizona, Washington, Virginia, New York City, Michigan, I think that's it, all who have relatives who fought in World War I and have been it's been so great that they've reached out and said, what do you want to know? I have a number of things to share with you. So again, throughout the country, we have history that can come back here to Appleton, about Appleton, which has been really cool. Sergeant Henschel, again, he serves with Company G in the war. In August of 1918, Company G is in the middle of a really bad battle, okay? And Sergeant Henschel, he's being asked to go find another one of the squads of Company G. It's nighttime, and the Germans are using artillery like crazy, like it's going out of style. As a matter of fact, there's a statistic that said 40% of all injuries, wounds in World War I are due to artillery shells, exploding artillery. That particular night, as Henschel is looking for his other squad from Company G, he gets hit and wounded from one of these, from the shrapnel from one of these artillery barrages, and as a result of that, seriously injured, and he will lose his left leg as a result of that. Here is Sergeant Henschel here on the right. I'm sorry, on the left. But that does not stop him after the war. He serves as Outagamie County Clerk for over 30 years, Outagamie County Clerk. Public service was apparently in his blood, right? So he served the public as a county clerk after the war for about 30 years. He also would participate in the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier dedication November 11th, 1921. You see, when the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is dedicated, the United States military asked for a representative from every state in the Union, a World War I vet, to be on hand at this dedication. And Sergeant Henschel from Appleton, Wisconsin, is chosen as Wisconsin's representative to be at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And here's a couple of pictures. I would love to be able to say, oh, there he is, but I can't do that. But this is as close as we're going to get. So Sergeant Henschel was there, which, again, really cool that somebody from Appleton, amazing, was chosen out of everybody in Wisconsin to represent the state at this very historic dedication. Now, as Paul Harvey would say, now for the rest of the story of the Henschel. Sergeant Henschel would have a son, and Ensign John J. Henschel would be a naval pilot in World War II. I'm just going to call, since they have the same names, I'll call him the son or junior. He would be a naval pilot, World War II, in the Pacific, and he would be stationed off of this carrier right here, the USS Randolph. That's where his plane would be sit, and he would fly off of, out in the Pacific during World War II. And there's a good picture of him, good-looking guy there. July 25th, 1945. Now, if you know your history on World War II, this date, in less than a month, Japan is going to surrender. Okay, so the war is tailing down in the Pacific, and Sergeant Henschel and his, or Ensign Henschel and his squad, which they're flying the Hellcat fighter off of the carrier Randolph. They're out on a mission that particular day. And this highlighted island here off the mainland of Japan, I am not going to try to pronounce the name of that island because I might get kicked out of here.
Shikoku is our sister city island.
Wow. Thank you for, yeah, and it's pronounced again?
Shikoku.
Yes, exactly what she said. That's what the name of it is. That's hysterical. That's fascinating. Well, here's the other rest of the story. So he is with his squad off of that island that is called
Shikoku.
Thank you. And they are on the hunt for a shipping transport, some ships that are transporting supplies for Japan. They find it, and the squad of Hellcat fighters, including Henschel, attack it. Unfortunately, some of these ships do have anti-aircraft guns, and Henschel is hit by one of these guns. He is shot down and lands in the ocean, and unfortunately the squad that he is with cannot do anything about it. They're super far away from the carrier, and they need to get back, or they're going to run out of gas themselves. They're going to be stuck there with him. So they do what they can to kind of get the enemy away so they don't do anything as he was shot down. They get back to the carrier, radio the carrier, and they do bring some search planes back over to help him out to find him, including a submarine that is nearby, tries to help him out as well. All parties go back and they cannot find him. Number of search parties go out there, they cannot find missing pilot Henschel. After the war, a year later, in October 22nd, 1946, the Henschel family, and this is the sergeant from our World War I days, and mom, parents of Ensign Henschel, they are being presented with the Distinguished Flying Cross, because at this point, the United States military considers John Henschel as killed in action. So the family is being presented this Distinguished Flying Cross. I looked up, they live on 1825 South Oneida Street, 1946, which I believe is still there. And if you're familiar with the Walgreens on Oneida Street, I believe it's 2 houses just to the north of the Walgreens where this family, the Henschel family, is living at the time of this picture, okay? That is 1946. Fast forward to the 1990s. There's a Japanese historian doing some research on a story that he has found out about 12 POWs, Allied POWs, that were stationed in Japan during the war. This historian wants to do some research about these guys. And lo and behold, his research, we now find out what happened to Pilot Henschel when he was shot down. Turns out that he ends up being rescued by some Japanese fishermen. Okay? He gets put onto the ship, and he is now their prisoner. They take them on land and seek out the military, the police, authorities to turn him in. And from there, he gets jailed, imprisoned with these other POWs, Allied POWs, in the city of Hiroshima. It is in Hiroshima two weeks later when the atomic bomb goes off, and that is where Pilot Henschel happens to be when that atomic bomb goes off. He is one of, I believe it's 12 prisoners of war Allied who will die also as a result of the atomic bomb that particular day. And in 2005, there's a memorial right here with the names of those who they believe had passed away because of the atomic bomb. 2005, Henschel will be added, and the POWs, their names will be added to this peace memorial in 2005 because of that day's event. Okay? So my last slide for the night. I love this picture. Wrap it up with the Henschels. This particular picture was sent to me by the Henschel family. This was taken in the 1980s, Riverside Cemetery, during one of the Memorial Day ceremonies. And if you go back to Sergeant Henschel from World War I, this is his brother, Irv, who would also serve with Company G in World War I. Again, based out of Appleton, Wisconsin. Love this picture. It says on the bottom, one of 3 World War I veterans on hand for Memorial Day ceremonies at Riverside Cemetery, reflects near the graves of fallen comrades as a color guard. You see them back there. The color guard stands at attention in the background. Really, this really cool picture. Really love it. So with that, I am a couple hours done ahead of time. I appreciate your time. It doesn't look like anybody fell asleep, which I appreciate as well. And I would be happy to ask questions. I'll stick around at the end if you got any questions for me. That's it.